Brexit Syed Kamal exposed Michel Barnier's trade deal bluff he has been using in rounds against the UK. Academic and research director of the IEA, Syed Kamal argued that he expected Brexit EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier to warn of the threat of no deal. During an interview with Express, Mr. Kamal claimed this was part of the EU's negotiating strategy. He said, by voicing concerns for no deal, Mr. Barnier's UK allies would put pressure on the British government. This in turn would make the UK more likely to cave to the EU's demands. However, the expert also noted the UK can use this same tactic against the bloc. Mr. Kamal said, when Michel Barnier says he fears no deal, I expect him to say that is part of the negotiations. I think both sides will want to play up the threat of no deal as part of the negotiations to try and force people to the table. Mr. Kamal insisted that Michel Barnier has been able to impact what is going on in the UK with his statements regarding the success of the trade deal talks in Europe. He said, if you think about Michel Barnier over previous rounds of negotiations, whenever he played up the threat of no deal, he knew he had his allies in the UK. These allies would then put the pressure on in the UK. He had friendly newspapers as well and he could pull their strings. These allies would warn the British government of a disastrous position. However, Mr. Kamal also noted that the UK was capable of using this same tactic against the EU. He said, likewise, if the UK plays up the threat of a no deal, there will be some voices in some capitals around the EU who will say to Barnier, make sure we don't end up with no deal. Those warnings are all part of the negotiations process. In terms of how the UK would cope with a no deal, what has been interesting is the UK has prepared for the eventuality of no deal. Despite the intention of Boris Johnson's government, the UK and EU have still not managed to agree a trade deal. With the end of the transition period, at the end of the year, looming, the likelihood of a no-deal Brexit is increasing. Last month, the Prime Minister gave the EU until October 15 to secure a post-Brexit trade deal with the UK, in order to make sure both parliaments have time to ratify an agreement before the end of the transition period. Mr. Barnier told EU ambassadors the talks will likely continue past Thursday's deadline and does not believe the UK will pull out of the talks if an agreement is not reached.